Welcome everyone to another edition of the Civ Battle Royale. My name is Dawkinzz and let's get right into part 109, Black Flags and Broomsticks. This week's OC is issue 7 of Battleship Weekly and comes from user Handanaka. Nice to get a glimpse into the lives of the minor powers, or in this case, non-powers, of the cylinder. I'd love to see something similar for the Kimberly Ghost Fleet. There's also a slightly sadder reason I picked it for today's part, but we'll get into that a bit later. Everybody's favorite melon map. That's my guess at least. It's deleted from the sidebar right now, so I can't look at it as I write this. It is the melon map, right? Hilo is probably still big from what I can remember. Brazil has absorbed the mighty boars and are now racing towards victory. This has been a truly terrifying takedown, made all the more impressive when you realize we've only seen half of the battle. Far above the ransacked boar cities, space stations and orbital refineries dot the sky. From a gameplay perspective, they're just ordinary future world buildings. 50-50 chance to be destroyed or captured with the city like any common granary or barracks. But just picture it. Boar space marines fighting to the last as one station after the next is blasted from the sky, destroyed by Skynet to prevent capture or stormed by the Bossa Nova Corps. Stations losing signal as their home city is nuked and being left to drift through space forgotten. Desperate Boar technicians trying to make sense of the broken signals from the ground, unable to comprehend the collapse of their empire. What a time to be following the CBR. It definitely reminds me, if you haven't seen at least the pilot episode of the quote-unquote newer Battlestar Galactica, I feel like it's quite relevant to what happened between the Boers and the Brazilians. So check it out. Brazil, unsurprisingly, takes first place yet again in the power rankings, and chances are good they won't be moving at all. But will the others be able to put a stop to them? Will the Inuit be able to step up to their frosty plate and stop them from consuming more of the Americas? Will they be able to push back, perhaps with the aid of the Buccaneers or even Australia, to stop this lime green menace? The rout of the mighty boars is all but complete, with even the island cities of Ondini and Middelburg falling before the march of the Brazilians. Kruger can still take spiteful potshots at embarked Brazilian units, but he won't be taking any cities back with range ships and a worker. Will Pedro continue to hunt Kruger through Antarctica, or leave him to ponder his mistakes? Perhaps Kruger will be left to be a rump state, or even be eliminated this part. It's sad to see them fall from grace like this. Shanghai falls to Brazil in a far distant conflict. There is nowhere on the cylinder that Pedro's impact is not felt. Australian, Blackfoot, and Inuit peacekeepers stand together to make progress as difficult as possible, but Tabriz is almost guaranteed to fall, with Beijing and Otrar next on the chopping block. Korea has put together a quite respectable force of biotroopers and robot infantry, though, which is a significant advantage over the paratrooper army Brazil had stationed in Sibir and Vietnam. More Brazilian units up here. Surprise! But I'd be surprised if this outdated and unsupported army did any better than Crowfoot's did against the Inuit. Hey, shut up. Amga might fall, but it's unlikely anything else will, without a lot of Brazilian bombers getting into range or another XCOM sweep. Pedro does have a few exclaves in Vietnam to use as air bases, but we haven't seen that area in a while, so we don't know what's going on. Mongolia has done a good job of modernizing, but they have very few units and some funky borders. If Kruger and Crowfoot are the new Order of the Rump, then Genghis is definitely the new Exclavia. Here we have Hawaii, unified for the first time in centuries under the heel of the kangaroo jackboot. As you probably noticed right away, Australia and the Inuit have made a disappointing peace. That war wasn't going to go anywhere anyway, so hopefully this will free them up to make gains somewhere manageable, like Korea, for example, where they both have sizable armies. Now, everyone's probably asking, like I am, but Akinek, what the hell were you even thinking? Were you just trying to get rid of the Australian peacekeepers in North America at the cost of 2 cities, I think it was? Not really a fair trade, in my opinion. Yes, I do hate the Inuit. Uncle! Cries Ingolfur Arneson, his arm twisted nearly out of its socket by a brawny Brazilian paratrooper. The Blackfoot army that once held sway here has been pushed back from the Inuit colony on the coast, replaced by more Carnival. More interesting, though, are the 2 loaded buccaneer carriers winding their way through the Arctic Sea. What's Morgan planning, anyway? War were declared. In this corner, weighing in at 10 settlers, 5 great people, and 60-odd Inuit super soldiers, it's Sweden. What cities they have left are tall and prosperous, but these guys are really stuck in a corner. At least they have a decent military. Lapper in around, I think, my graphics can't really judge who that is, serves as a reminder of Pedro's reach. It's been annexed, although the useless settler proves it has still retained some of its Swedish culture. Peace is made, and Kruger surrenders some of his few remaining Arctic cities to pacify the Samba Titan. The massive Boer fleet leaves to roam the ocean, a sort of karmic justice for the Congolese ghost fleet of so many parts ago. Remember those guys? Those were simpler times, and yet more hopeful. Now I fear we near the end of this saga as Henry Parks declares war on the Boer diaspora like a vulture plucking at carrion. Good night, sweet robot prince. Crowfoot watches sadly from a troop carrier as Kekkonen gloats from his submarine. Hey Paul, how's that Iberia working out for you? Unguarded troop ships carry a small and disorganized gaggle of Australian soldiers towards Luma, one of the last Boer cities. For backup, they have brought a lone carrier with a single plane. Typical Aussie brilliance, although in the real-life Boer War, British Australia sent a force of Aborigines to South Africa. At the end of the war, they wouldn't let them back into Australia because they weren't white. Is that what's happening here? I hope not. That's actually a really sad part of history. Are these just the Kimberley draftees deemed acceptable losses? That's horrible. I mean, I know the Civ is filled with, like, millions of artificial deaths, but, man, history is shitty sometimes. Shanghai goes back to Korea, though it looks like there's going to be a lot of flipping in this region. I'm not seeing any XComs though, so it looks like Pedro's ability to reinforce this push is lacking, to say the least. Flip-flop, Shanghai drops. When will the open borders stop? This whole region must be a logistical nightmare. No fewer than 8 civs have armies here out of 12 total. Notice the fat stacks of planes in Kuchum's new cities. Could he be planning on joining the fun? The Inuit legions have expanded into the glorious Dragon Empire. Vietnam has done a good job of getting these cities back up to a healthy population after the Australian and Blackfoot invasions, although Vagon is still puppeted. I'm impressed at the sheer number of Australian troops in Korea right now, especially considering they were at war with Korea a little while ago and couldn't seem to get a force together. If they declared war again, I can see them making some real gains. The cries to delete Brazil grow louder in Bor Wollongara. I don't think Pedro's untrustworthy nature is coming as a surprise to anyone. With the capture of Shanghai, Brazil borders every remaining civ except Mongolia and the Blackfoot. And believe me, the Blackfoot are quite familiar with Pedro's honeyed words and hidden daggers. A shot of Vietnam's core. Now, you know me, and I'm such a huge Vietnam supporter, but this is a pretty disappointing display. There are decent rings of troops around the core cities, but most of their territory is full of Inuit in Brazil. On the bright side, filling your lands with 2 types of peacekeepers makes it harder for either one to backstab you. But seriously, Trunks, build an army. Or join the Korean hate train. That works too. This is a big development considering that Sibir and Vietnam have just joined forces again to attack Korea, making the logistical mess even messier. Vietnam can maybe take some of these southern cities, but the Inuit and Australians certainly aren't making things any easier. Don't know what the sitch is for Sibir though, but based on the last few shots of that region, I doubt they'll have an easier time of it. But it would be nice if Sibir could make some gains in Korea though. I would bring them back up to a contender status if that were the case, and we could give the conquest a cool name like Siberia. Oh, great. Come on, really? Tabriz has fallen to the Emperador, and Shanghai has obviously flipped some more, but now looks quite firmly Brazilian. Brazil now borders everybody but the Blackfoot thanks to their treacherous cross-continental campaigns. Beijing's population is the same, so it hasn't flipped, but it almost certainly will this coming turn. Korea has a respectable army in this area though, and both Sibir and Vietnam seem entirely cut off from the battle. This shot demonstrates the massive gap between number 2 Inuit and number 3 Sibir. Wall-to-wall Inuit troops fill Sibir's easternmost holdings. Kuchum has annexed both Al-Mark and Sanchu though, so he may be able to bulk up his forces in the region. Sibir has also captured Tiflis from Sejong. Their Chatgort troopers, there's a lot of oolongs in that one, storming the walls and routing the Korean defenders. Doesn't look like pushing any further will be easy though. Here we see the Boer Antarctic Territory, or as the kids like to call it, the entirety of the Boer Empire. Not only did they choose the smallest of their 4 cities to be the new capital, it still doesn't have a courthouse. Nothing short of a full elimination could hammer in the reality of the Boer collapse more than this shot of Kruger's new, icy home. With their 5 population capital and with their only 2 land tiles, both occupied by Inuit Terminators. Disgusting. Vacationing in recently subjugated Europe, Pedro is shocked to find a lingonberry in his Hyperina. I don't know what that is. He orders for thousands of his Swedish slaves to be executed and has his delegates bring a strongly worded complaint to the World Congress. Brazil has a healthy army here, but very outdated, and certainly not the kind of carpet we've come to expect from them. The Inuit legions stationed in Sweden could make some trouble here in the advent of another war, but they would need Sweden's help to capture any cities at all. Right in the core of Vietnam, Pedro is still making all the gains. Chongqing falls, and it doesn't look like Korea will be taking it back with all of the Aussies in the way. I'm probably going to have to hand in my Thought Police badge for saying this, but I'm a bit disappointed in Vietnam here. I'm not sure they'll get a single city out of this debacle, which is, I mean, they're right there, just take them. They're ripe for the picking. Korea stands bravely in the face of Brazilian imperialism, retaking Tabriz and nuking Shanghai off the map. Ouch. Sorry, Mao. Vietnam has a settler nearby and now has an open path to Korea. Never count us out. Even though you just did. That was decisive. Last shot of this area, Brazilian troops crowded around Shanghai like a wave of lime, alcohol, and those little cocktail umbrellas they put on the nice tropical drinks. Now there's nothing but pillaged tiles and radiation. A big hand for Reverend Emperor Sejong, who has made the beast bleed, and all it took was thermonuclear weapons. Sitting Bull, be with me. There are no borders, there are no front lines, just a massive mess of people fighting and confusingly shaped wall. This would make a good action movie though, if you were on a budget and wanted to show off all of the Cylinder's armies without having to film in multiple locations. Yarmanka and Elgye look ready to fall to Mongolian robot infantry as the battle between Beshbalik and Atrar rages on. Genghis doesn't have many soldiers, but he's putting them to good use. Okay, so this is written out to be kind of, I think, a Star Trek joke, but I'm going to say it how it's written and how I want to. Oi, my Khan! Comes the anguished cries of all the elderly Jewish men in Karakorum. It does seem that Genghis is going to lose cities before he gains any, as Oi Maya Khan has fallen to Sejong. Tom Tor seems soon to follow, besieged by a mighty Korean navy. No wait, carriers. Alright, whatever, nothing to see. Don't do it, Sejong. You're fighting too many wars already. This announcement gives me hope for Parks. He could take Japan overnight and quite possibly the Korean Peninsula too if war were to start up again. He conspicuously lacks a navy though, even in comparison to Sejong's carrier-centric trash pile. Did someone say carrier-centric? Jeez, Inglefur. The Buccaneers have more planes than Iceland does in this slide, which is to say they have exactly 1 plane in this slide. Plot against Kruger all you want, he probably still has a better core than you do. Ugh, that's an insult. All these carriers are really getting on my nerves. They're totally useless like floating bricks. Sea bricks. Hey, that's not useless. Anyway, did you know that if you rearrange the letters in aircraft carrier and add a can of alphabet soup, it spells Vote Umayyads? No, it doesn't. No agenda here, just some cool carrier trivia. That's not true. If you do that, it spells vote the homies, West Africa. Go to the vote now. Go to the vote today if you can. I mean, if you're hearing that on March 13th, 2018 is when this is being released. Go to the West Africa vote and vote the homies. They're the homies. Sejong and Pedro make peace, with Pedro having captured one city and forced another's destruction. Now he's just fully in the way, as if Parks and Ekanik weren't doing a good enough job already. Despite the peacekeepers, Sabir manages to take Amga and Santar. Amga is firmly in his hands, Santar might flip, and Yarmanka has clearly flipped already but looks to go grey in the end.
The end times are upon us. First, conquest rode forth on a bright orange hover tank. Then war dropped from the sky in a lime green parachute. Now the book has been broken open in famine's icy grip as he declares war on death, I guess. Maybe famine should just be famine after the reset, so Ekanik can be death. But then would Morgan be pestilence? Seems a bit off.
Okay, so the metaphor sort of escaped from me there, but the enormity of the scene before me has not. Ekanik has turned his armies south against the Buccaneers, but Pedro the Puppet Master has leapt to the aid of his old enemy, if you could call it that. Since Brazil first began routing the Boers in Africa, it was held by many that Morgan's nukes would be the only thing that could stop his complete ascendancy. But now those nukes point upward, and I count at least 6 of them. Ciudad Juarez has been nuked and Brazilian robots advance on its shattered wall. The wall is broken. The wall is down, except the troops are coming north now. The White Walkers are being pushed against. And while it isn't in frame, the circle of near-dead Inuit soldiers suggests that Morgan has shown true grit and nuked Houston as well. It's a good day for Brazil, a bad day for the Inuit, and a generally ugly situation. A lone, dying Texas Ranger rides out the mushroom cloud, desperately trying to extinguish the atomic fire on his blazing saddle. Haha. Brazilian Mexico has been bombed to yellow or red, but the Inuit don't have any units at the front after that clutch nuking. A reminder of the Inuit and Brazilian peacekeepers that must now be fighting for their lives all over the cylinder. We see the Inuits' lonely Greenland colony. It is menaced by Brazilian forces, but not in any danger of falling. A Buccaneer carrier is caught behind enemy lines. There will be no escape for them, with the cybersubs prowling the icy waters. Their planes fly out for one final run, trailing the Jolly Roger in defiance. Nobody has any clue what's going on in Asia anymore, including me, except that it involves a lot of people killing each other in one war while trying to avoid the people fighting the other. Vietnam has taken Tabriz, but Sejong has mustered a great army to bring against the invaders. It doesn't seem to me like Nick or Pedro would have stopped unit production at a time like this, so does that mean units from both sides are being teleported into an active battlefield? Without any cities at stake for either party at that? If so, we may be looking at the most pointless meat grinder in the CBR's history. Brazilian Raj, now almost entirely annexed, hosts some Siberian and Australian partygoers. In the middle of the subcontinent stands Uberlandia, a public display of Pedro's power and ego. Meanwhile, the American throwdown is overshadowed by an even greater event. Coral is still legal. What could it all mean? Finland and the Buccaneers led the movement to preserve it, but the Inuit came out strongly against. Could this be an effort by Kekkonen to revive his lost empire by allying with Morgan? And Mongolia has taken the Inuit side in opposition to Brazil, a clear and worrying statement. Possibly most shocking is Australia siding with the Inuit. There's just so much going on in this slide, I don't know where to start. The nations of the cylinder decide it's been too long since the last Orange Containment Project and start another one. And it's a quick and decisive victory. In the background, Sabir flexes its muscles. Far from being covered in Brazilians like they were a few parts ago, they now boast a mighty carpet. If they can make more progress against Korea and devour the remaining Mongolian rump state, Kuchum will be a serious contender. The real takeaway here is much sadder, though. Texas is not listed in the voting nations. Pedro, with his world-spanning power, has spitefully destroyed the Lone Star battleship. My God. What will happen to the Battleship Weekly? F. In Islamic belief, the conquest of Constantinople would be one of the signs of the impending day of judgment. Islam may have faltered on the cylinder, but they got one thing right. Pedro took Constantinople in its evisceration of Sweden, and since then, the cylinder has been nothing but carnival. Admittedly, Constantinople had already been captured quite a few times by other people, but this time it's legit. Oh, that is funny. A sad day gets sadder as Crowfoot declares war on the crippled Boers. There will be no order of the rump in this pitiless world. Brazilian XComs drop on the front lines to attack Inuit Mexico, but no cities have fallen yet. I swear, if Crowfoot is the one to kill the Boers, I am going to smile. I'm just going to smile. That's it. Houston has indeed been nuked, and Henry's still got nukes to spare. Gonzalez is at half health, but its population has not dropped, suggesting it was just conventional stealth bombing. Petit Goave has been bombed to the red, but its robotic garrison holds strong and threatens to advance into Inuit lands. How the hell does any of this make sense? Korea has somehow taken Tabriz back from Vietnam, and now it's entirely surrounded by peacekeepers and Mongolian hover tanks, which can't take cities. But there are Inuit nearby, so maybe one of the Inuit peacekeepers will kill one of the Brazilian peacekeepers, or maybe one of the hover tanks will die so that Mongolia, Sibir, and Vietnam could squabble over the decimated city, and then... Kuchum snatches Oh My God, like the jerk he is. It started the part as a Mongolian city, by the way, and Yarmanka as Elgye teeters on the brink. Turfan is ripe for the picking if you could only get past the peacekeepers. The Inuit definitely seem to be winning against Brazil up here, not that it makes any difference at all in the actual war being fought. Don't do it, Crowfoot. Don't you do it. You have so few units left, don't squatter them in suicide attacks. But, oh well, what was I going to expect? AI is going to AI. The Boers have been at war with 3 different civs for most of the part without it so much as warranting a flyover. But now we got 10, let's say 10 potential nukes heading its way. That's funny. This is more or less the same shot we saw earlier, but with the lovely fallout clouds visible. And Morgan has at least 7 more nukes in this slide, with more probably stored in Puerto Cabello. It feels damn good to have the pirate back, but not the trembling buffer state. The vicious, greedy, rum-soaked pirate king, out to seek revenge against the cold boys up north. Puebla takes a nuke as well, instantly carbonizing a large column of Inuit soldiers as Gonzalez falls to Brazil. Morgan's doing all the work for him. Morgan is sweeping Econic's carpet clean. Haha, like a broom. There it is. That was good. Pedro has played this perfectly, turning the minor powers of America against his rival while he expands his empire unopposed. Inuit go before Brazil in turn order though, so Nick can hopefully fill that gap before Pedro floods it with XComs, if Pedro even has the XComs to do it with. We haven't seen many in this theater compared to Africa, so it's entirely possible that most of his mobile forces are still tied up in the old world. A solid unbroken wall of Australians and Inuit cut Vietnam off from Korea. Bongo, 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 can they stop the Viet Cong though? Yes, they can. Bring your flag to war day in Korea. Have they regressed to using semaphore? Are they supposed to be bannermen, or did Sejong just decide he needed 10 settlers and a further pissed off Brazil? The main takeaway here is how empty Sejong's corps is compared to Sibir's, not much of an air force either, and it looks like he might flip Oh My Khan a couple of times before he's definitely on the losing end of this war. Austin flies the Jolly Roger as a skull-plated iron giant storms the beaches. What a day it's been. With Austin having only just been taken from the Blackfoot, I doubt it had any space installations, which puts my Cowboys vs. Space Pirates fanfiction to rest. But this is still a huge moment for the proud Buccaneers everywhere. I hope Henry can put that manipulative mini Pedro in his place and make some gains here, though it doesn't look like he has some ground forces for it. I'm going to settle for hoping Henry keeps Austin instead of it flipping and going to Pedro. Winnipeg has just been nuked, and it seems like Kitchener was nuked last turn. Henry has 10 more nukes in the slide, although if I were him, I would park my submarines a little further from the coast. With a great mass of robots in Florida, might be able to take Albany or Centrafilgog. Sorry, it's not on the melon map, and I can't read these city names worth a damn. Neither city is damaged, but Brazil and the Bucks both have strong air forces. Tabriz is about to fall, but whether it falls to Sibir or Mongolia is anyone's guess. Turfan and Otrar have taken some serious bombing as well, but the Inuit are spreading. Any gains will have to be made quickly before the entire battlefield is choked. Oh, come on. Alright, Ciudad Juarez still hasn't fallen or even flipped, which strikes me as odd considering the breakneck speed of the conquest of Africa. My guess is that the Brazilians still haven't gotten their 27B/6 filled out. They're real sticklers for paperwork. At least they have the Australians to keep the Inuit from Guadalajara. Austin, regrettably, is now in Brazilian hands, and it's a rough place to live. It's been in the hands of every remaining American civ in the last couple of parts. Doesn't look like Morgan's role in this war is going to be much more than nuke support going forward, which is exactly what Mini Pedro wants. Dallas has fallen as well, and Brazil now holds most of the southern coastal cities. El Paso has been bombed to yellow, and Sisseton has been nuked. The Inuit carpet seems to be breaking up under the bombardment as pirate forces press up from Florida, and XCOM's menace Houston. There's also a surprisingly large embarked Australian force here. Parks could certainly flip Brazil's recent conquests if he declared now, although it wouldn't amount to anything beyond the first turn. Seems to me like he was planning on starting another war with the Inuit, only their southern border disappeared while he was in transit. Tabriz is Mongolian at the moment, but it's bound to fall back to Sejong, and the bloody peacekeepers are getting in the way of everything. Blue Cassette is surely beginning to regret hiring Michael Bay to direct this season of CBR. All these distractions and obstacles are making the Asian subplot almost impossible to follow. Doesn't look like Korea and the Inuit have open borders, though the Australians now cover most of Korea. Typical Hollywood whitewash casting. Suddenly and encouragingly, we see some of the Siberian unit carpet make its way to Korea. Tamat looks like the next city to be taken, although Genghis is making a brave push towards Nizhny Kolodsk. Alright. Inuit and Brazilians stare at each other passive-aggressively over the Great Wall. Open borders being what they are, the Inuit can't cross, which is just as well for the feeble paratroopers on the other side. Two cities here, Juiz de Fora and São José dos Campos, native Arabian culture is devoured one piece at a time by the ever-expanding Samba Titan and his Portuguese city names. The World Congress stands up to Brazilian imperialism by trying to make olives illegal and embargo the buccaneers. Devin, Jerusalem, and Bethlehem have been annexed, but my main worry is the colossal Brazilian Air Force based here. The Siberian carpet expands into Brazilian territory in a clever subversion of the normal peacekeeper arrangement. In the last couple of parts, it was worried that the Brazilians in Sibir made them a doomed power, but Kuchum has really found his feet this part. He's the only power that I can think would make gains against Brazil right now. Oh my. So far as I can tell, Brazil and the Boers do not have open borders, meaning the Boer fleet we saw earlier is cut off from their only remaining cities. And while the Australian fleet approaching Boer Antarctica is hardly massive, at least their carriers are loaded. I don't want to jump to any hasty conclusions, but the Boers could well lose Luma even if they avoid elimination. Oh dear. The Blackfoot fleet is most likely on its way to Boer Antarctica, but there's a chance it might suicidally attack Australia as well, which I hope he doesn't. Either way, it's clear Pedro still has his claws in Crowfoot, using him either to avoid warmonger penalties or to distract one of his few remaining rivals. Brazil is now too powerful to be narrated in simple words. Only Ricky Martin would do him justice. Oh, here we go. Loves manipulation, black flags in Buffalo, faced with annihilation. Boys say he's got to go. But has a day just brightened? 2 armies have embarked. Who's next to join the fighting? Crowfoot or Henry Park? They open up your borders, but he dumped you on the curb. You drop them a denounce, but then he takes Johannesburg just to get the final word. Upside, inside out, you're doing the bossa nova. Balls Vocaloid, no doubt, doing the bossa nova. The Inuit looks great, but he couldn't stop the X-Compton roller. Now the southern states are doing the bossa nova. They're doing the bossa nova. They're doing the bossa nova. They're doing the bossa fucking nova, bitch, fuck you. I would like to make a formal apology to your ears and your brain and for your life and my life. Tabriz was Mongolian last we saw. Now it's back in Korea's hands, but with a hungry Siberian biotrooper ready to snatch it right up. Last slide saw Cienfuegos, almost had it there, fall to Brazil while the Bucks nuked Montreal, but I couldn't find a way to fit it in. It's been quite a part. The Boer rump state is hunted on all sides, the deciding war for Americas is being waged all across the cylinder, and more challenges approach in the form of overflowing Australian-Siberian carpets. Perhaps more exciting than anything else, we have seen the return of the bloody pirate we all loved so much. All of us. If you say you don't, you're just trying to be edgy. Population chart, with Brazil obviously leading. You know, just how bloody these last wars have been when you realize that, despite holding vastly more land than the Boers ever did, the population of the Brazilian Empire is a lot lower than the number of the Boers when they were at their peak. Inuit in 5th after absorbing the Blackfoot is a bit of a surprise, as is Sibir with half Australia's population but a fair chunk more production. In the background we have a fully carpeted Australia, besides the lakes which are currently being leased by a Brazilian swimming team. This is devastating. Brazil has nearly double the Inuits' production, but Sibir has a very impressive count as well, and Vietnam is surprisingly close behind 4th placed Australia. The Boers languish at the very back, behind even the Blackfoot with their paltry 259 hammers. Boop. Korea is outproduced more than 4-1 by the coalition against them. Brazil are a very cultured people, beating next place Inuit by more than 3-1. You know, something just occurred to me that I'm not sure has been said yet. Not only is Brazil big, but get this, 10 parts ago we might not have seen this coming. I'm going to make a post in multiple comments, people must be told. Their tourism lead over the Inuit is smaller, but still enough for them to rig the Civ Rap Battle Royale so the Inuit would lose. Have you no shame, Pedro? Australia is handily beaten by not only the Inuit but Sibir as well, which is rather unexpected. Looking back at the culture stats from last slide, it looks like Brazil would be pretty darn close to a cultural victory if it weren't disabled. Only Sibir and the Inuit and barely Australia have more culture than the Brazil has tourism. And that's before modifiers for trade routes and open borders and all of that jazz. Australian Catholicism is still the largest religion, mostly thanks to the efforts of the late Tiridates. Blackfoot Arianism, with its 15% production bonus, is in 2nd place. Could this be part of the reason the American civs are so far in the lead? Dodecahedronism, or dodecatheism, remains limited to Jerusalem. Foreign Sadir has spread through a decent chunk of Iceland's territory, and Nestorianism is practiced by 7 guys on a submarine. The religion map. Theravada has taken hold in South Asia and is spreading through Oceania. Lutheranism is the majority religion in New Brazil, Africa, to use outdated name, and the Catholic juggernaut holds sway in Europe, Asia, and Alaska. And that's been part 109 of the Civ Battle Royale. Place your bets in the New World War we've got brewing. It's been a wild ride. I don't know who narrated this part. You can find, I'll try to link it in the comments and put it below. Or you can go to the subreddit and find out who it was and thank them for making me sing Ricky Martin like an asshole. Well, if you like that or you hated it, please like and subscribe and join us next week for part 110, to be determined, I suppose. But until then, we'll see you next time.